I remember when I was a kid playing Gran Turismo 2, and that went hand in hand when the S2000 came out because it was both around 2000, I think. And when that game came out, it like promoted the hell out of that car. It was on the title video, it was on the main menu, arcade mode screen, and I always picked that car to go racing, always. And I remember when the S2000 came out, my dad was also excited too. And so we played Gran Turismo 2 together, and I'd pick that car, and then he'd pick something else. I always try to beat him in it. And of course, being a dad, he probably let me win a few times. But I always remember that car, being distilled in my childhood. I remember that car always being a part of my childhood. I remember always getting like the miniature versions of it, the 1/8 scale, little scale models of it. I always had and like played around with it as a child and a kid. And it was my favorite car. It was a Honda. And so like as I got older, it was always a part of me like wanting to own that car someday. And I remember as I got older, I always had it in the back of my mind, so I was always looking up used car ads for it, particularly like on Craigslist, checking the market, see how much it is used, and I always had an eye on the AP1s. As I got older, I got to appreciate the AP1 a lot more, and I began to understand the difference between AP1, AP2, and I always prefer the AP1 because, first off, that engine being a 9,000 RPM redline, 1999, that was sort of like unheard of from a factory Honda with 240 horses out of a 2-liter, and being a real-wheel drive sports car from Honda, just the oddball car in the lineup. And so I always thought of the AP2 as more of like the consumer-driven design. It was what the consumers wanted more in the sense of like suspension geometry, a little more torque from the 2.2-liter engine, and style updating. I kind of just preferred how the first one looked. So I was looking for used AP1s, and the price range varied from 10 to 20 something thousand, depending on the condition, mileage, etc. So let's start an eyeball AP1s with a little over 100,000 miles. It was more affordable at that time for me. I had my first car still, and I was driving that for a while, for I don't know how long, and then I came to realize, like, hey, if I sell this, I have enough money saved up, I can afford, to buy an S2000. And I was looking around the 12,000 price range, and so I kind of told my dad about that idea, and knowing him how much he loved the car, he's like, yeah, you should do it. And I was like, okay. And so sold my car, and then it was more a matter of finding the right S2000 to buy. We went to go look at a '02 S2000 in Daly City. I had a few owners, and it was at a used dealer, and it came from, I think, New Mexico. The pictures looked nice, but when we got to it, it kind of looked, paint, clear coat faded a bit from certain areas, had some damage, on the bumper, scuffs and whatnot. Had an aftermarket stereo, aftermarket intake, aftermarket exhaust. But, we were there, so I test drove it anyways. And, felt good, especially when I was younger and you could hear that exhaust note and the induction noise. So I got back and was like, I like this car, but the price isn't right and the condition is not that great. So, I figured I'll see if I can negotiate the price a bit. And didn't really get anywhere. So I was like, yeah, walked away, no big deal. And I remember, looking around the market for, different 2000 to 2003 model ranges, and ran into a yellow one, thought about buying that, and ended up passing on it. I was like, no, I really want a Berlina Black. And then a Berlina Black came up. It's about an hour and a half away from where I lived, Santa Clara. We went down to Santa Clara with the intention of buying the car that day. So we went down because of how clean it was. I was like, oh, I can't pass up this offer. So we went down there, checked it out, and it was clean title, one owner, from only in California the whole time. A little over 100,000 miles, but the thing was completely stock. And I loved that it was stock. And the only thing that hadn't been done to it was that the side emblems were taken off, which wasn't a big deal to me. It was dry underneath everything. I mean, over 100,000 miles, this thing almost looked like it was brand new, with the exception of a few little, dings and scratches. But I was like, yeah, it's not a big deal. The price seemed right, and took it out for a test drive, and then just fell in love with it. I was like, this is it. This is one I want. And so luckily, I guess we bought it that day because the guy had told me, oh, after you had called, there was someone else in line who had wanted to buy the car. And I was like, oh, well, that's going to be bad news for them. And so took the car home. I wasn't all that comfortable with driving manual yet. I'd driven manual in the past, but it was about an hour and a half drive. And I was like, we'll just take the car we came in. So my dad drove the S2000 back home. And it didn't hit me until we were on the freeway that I was like, oh shit, I bought the car. It's mine. And it hit me when, we're driving on the freeway and he was a little ways ahead of me and I was behind. And, it was a sunny day and the car was clean. It was just washed. And, just looking at it, I was like, wow, that's it's my car. And it's always when someone else drives your car, you appreciate it more because you're able to see it in angles and ways that you can't see it, you can't see when you're driving. And so, the first thing that came to mind is like Gran Turismo 2 when I was a kid, picking that car in the game, just, racing with it all the time. And I was like, wow, this is my childhood dream car, We got home. I hadn't told any of my friends or family that I bought the car. And so it was a bigger surprise to my friends and family when I showed the car to them, that day and then the following day. They're all shocked, like, oh, you bought this car? I was like, yeah. I was like, why didn't you say anything? I was like, oh, it's better not to say anything and see the surprised look on your faces. For me, the intention of that car was enjoy it, drive it every day. Also, learn to work on it, because I had loved cars, ever since I was a kid. I just really didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to work on them. I knew basic stuff, but I wanted to, gain more experience there. So when I got that car, anything and everything that I could do, I did on my own and learned, researched and service manual, forms, everything like that. I learned, valve adjustment, brakes, do all the fluids, as well as like other little things that were special to that car. And later on, I eventually swapped out the suspension for PSS 9 coilovers, put in a Koyo rad, and also did an exhaust mod, an intake. I swapped out the interior for a tan. I always wanted the tan interior, and that was never an option on that car with that color. So I was able to swap out the black for tan. It's sort of a bias for some people. Some people love it, some people don't. And also put a front lip on it and a rear lip spoiler and factory front and rear lip. Swapped out for AP2 wheels. I always liked how those AP2 04, 05 wheels looked on the AP1 car. So I got a chance to put those on there. For me, I always wanted to keep that car just clean. I didn't want to go too extravagant with looks and everything like that. So I just want to keep it clean. Factory wheels, just a 17-inch. Lowered a bit, but not too much where I just can't drive it on my favorite roads or, certain places where it's ridiculous, Being one of the few with a manual, I taught quite a few of my friends how to drive stick shift in that car. This was pretty memorable, especially when it was one of the first dates I had with my girlfriend. The car now has about 173,000 miles, and pretty much the majority of it, paint-wise and everything, is pretty much stock. I mean, the only thing I had resprayed was the front bumper and hood, due to like rock chips and whatnot. And the front windshield I had to replace due to, to this day, I don't know what hit it, but I just remember being late for an exam in the morning and I was just rushing. and I'm stressing out, and the next thing I knew, I just hear a pop, and then the windshield literally just cracked in circles. I was like, what the hell hit it? And then so I was like, okay, I gotta worry about that later. I gotta go to class. And then I come out and try to figure out what it is, and I was like, I don't know. For me, it's just a matter of just enjoying the car, just driving it, enjoying it, and it's really an experience, especially driving it every day. Both good and bad. Driving it in the rain or in the sun. It's always nice to drive. It's even better when you're able to kind of drive another car for a while and then get back to it, and then you kind of appreciate it even more. It's like going back, fitting back into a glove when I get in that car. It's like, oh, everything just feels right.